Hello, welcome to SavoryFox Talks. We're going to be talking about grief, the, gri- the grieving process, and loss. Um, what is grief? Grief is the natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. Often the pain of um, loss can feel overwhelming. You may experience all kinds of difficult and unexpected emotions, from shock to anger to uh, disbelief, guilt, and profound sadness. Um, the pain of grief can also disrupt your physical health, making it difficult to sleep, eat, and even think straight. These are normal reactions to loss, and the more significant the loss, the more intense your grief will be. Coping with the loss of someone or something you love is one of life's biggest challenges. You may associate grieving with the death of a loved one, which is often the cause of the most intense type of grief. But any loss can cause grief, including divorce or relationship breakup, loss of health, losing a job, loss of financial stability, retirement, death of a pet, loss of a friendship, and even selling the family home. Even subtle losses can trigger a sense of grief. For example, you might grieve after moving away from home, graduating from college, or changing jobs. Whatever your loss, it's personal to you, so don't feel ashamed about how you feel or or believe that it's somehow only appropriate to grieve for certain things. If the person, animal, relationship, or situation was significant to you, it's normal to grieve the loss you're experiencing. Whatever the cause of your grief, though, there are healthy ways to cope with the pain that i- that in time can um, ease your sadness and help you come to terms with your loss. Find more meaning and eventually move on with your life. The grief of losing a loved one. whether it's a close friend, a spouse, a, a partner, a parent, a child, or other relative. Few things are as painful as losing someone you love. After such um, a significant loss, life might never seem the same again. But in time, you can ease your sorrow, start to look to the future, and eventually come to terms with your loss. What is the grieving process? Grieving is a highly individual experience. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. How you grieve depends on on many factors, including your personality and coping style, your life experience, your faith, and how significant the loss is to you. Inev- Inevitably, pro- the grieving process takes time. Healing happens gradually. It can't be forced or hurried, and there is no normal timetable for grieving. Some people start to feel better in weeks or months. For others, grieving the grieving process is measured in years. Whatever your grief experience, uh, it's important to be patient with yourself and allow the process to naturally unfold. Myths and facts about the grieving process. Myth: the pain will go away if you ignore it. Fact: trying to ignore your pain keeps it from surfacing and will only make it worse in the long run. For real healing, it is necessary to face the grief and accurately deal with it, actively deal with it. Um, Myth: it's important to be strong to face your loss. Fact: feeling sad, frightened, or lonely is a normal reaction to loss. Crying doesn't mean you are weak. You don't need to protect your family or friends by putting on a brave front. Showing your true feelings can help them and you. Smith: if you don't cry, it means aren't sorry about the loss. Crying is a normal response to sadness, but it's not the only one. These are those who don't cry may feel the pain, just not as deeply as others. They may simply have other ways of showing it. Myth: grieving should last about a year. Fact, there is no specific time frame for grieving. How long it to takes others from um, uh, differs from person to person. Myth. Um, Moving on with your life means forgetting about your loss. Fact. Moving on means you have accepted your loss, but that's not the same as forgetting. You can move on with your life and keep the memory of someone or something you lost as an important part of you. In fact, as we move through life, these memories can become more and more integral to defining the people we are. Here's some tips on how to deal with the grieving process. Acknowledge your pain. Accept that grief can trigger many different and unexpected emotions. Understand that your grieving process is will be unique to you. See Seek out face-to-face support from people who care about you. Support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself uh, physically. Um, Recognize the difference between grief and depression. What are the 5 stages of grief? In 1968, no, 1969, psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross introduced what became known as the stages of grief. These stages of grief were based on the studies of feelings of patients facing terminal illness, but many people just generalize them to be types of negative life changes and losses, um, such as the death of a loved one or a breakup. The 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. If you are experiencing any of these emotions following a loss, it may help to know that your reaction is natural and that you'll heal in time. However, not everyone who grieves goes through all of these stages, and that's okay. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to go through each stage in order to heal. Um, in fact, some people resolve their grief without going through any of these stages. And if you do go through these stages of grief, You probably won't experience them in a neat sequential order. So don't worry about what you should be feeling to what or what stage you're supposed to be in. Yeah. Ross never intended these stages to be a rigid framework um, um, that applies to everyone who mourns. In her last book before um, her death in 2004, she said the five stages of grief then were never meant to help track messy emotions into neat packages. Um, they are responses to loss that many people have, but there is not a typical response to loss, as there is no typical loss. Our grieving is as individual to us as ourselves, as our lives. What are the five? What are the stages of grief? In 1969, psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler Ross introduced what became known as the five stages of grief. These stages of grief were based on her studies of the feelings of patients facing terminal illness. But many people have generalized them to other types of negative life changes and losses, such as the death of a loved one or a breakup. The five stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. If you are experiencing any of these emotions following a loss, it may help to know that your reaction is natural and that you will heal in time. However, not everyone who grieves goes through all of these stages, and that's okay. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to go through each stage in order to heal. Um, in fact, some people resolve their um, grief without going through any of the stages. Um, and if you do go through these stages of grief, you probably won't experience them in a neat sequential order. So don't worry about what you you should be feeling or which stage you're supposed to be at. Kubler-Ross herself never intended these stages to be a rigid framework uh, that applies to anyone who mourns. Um, in her last book before her death in 2004, she said the five stages of grief. She said of the five stages of grief, they were never meant to help tuck messy emotions into neat packages. They were responses, they are responses to loss that many people have, but there is not a typical response to loss, as there is no typical loss. Over over our grieving is as natural to us as our lives. Grief can be a roller coaster. Instead of a series of stages, we might also think of the grieving process as a roller coaster full of ups and downs, highs and lows. Like many roller coasters, the ride leads to a rough leads tends to be rougher in the beginning, and the lows may be deeper and longer. The difficult periods should become less intense and shorter as time goes by. But it takes time to work through a loss. Even years after a loss, especially at special events such as a family wedding or a birth of a child, we may still experience a strong sense of grief. Symptoms of grief. While loss affects people in different ways, many of us experience the following symptoms where where when we're grieving. Um, just remember that almost anything that you will experience in the early stages of grief is normal, including feeling like you're going crazy, uh, feeling like you're in a bad dream, or questioning your religious or spiritual beliefs. Emotional symptoms of grief: shock and disbelief, sadness, guilt, fear, and anger. Physical symptoms of grief can be fatigue, nausea, lowered immunity, weight loss or weight gain, or um, aches and pains. Types of grief: anticipatory grief. As the name suggests, anticipatory grief um, um, develops before a significant loss occurs before a significant loss occurs, rather than after it. Um, if it's if it's a loved one terminally ill, for example, you have an 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 aging pet, or you know that your retirement or your job loss is imminent, um, imminent, you may start grieving your loss before it has truly unfolded. Disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief, sized grief can occur when your loss is devalued, stigmatized, or cannot be openly mourned. Some people may minimize the loss of a job or a pet or a friendship, for example, as something that's not worth grieving over. You may feel um, you may feel stigmatized if you suffered a miscarriage or lost a loved one to suicide. Complicated grief. The pain at a significant loss may never completely disappear, but it should ease up over time. When it doesn't, it keeps you from resuming your daily life, and, and relationships. It may be a sign of complicated grief. Complicated grief usually arises from the death of a loved one, where the loss has left you stuck in a state of be- bere- bereavement. Bereavement. Um, you may be unable to accept your loved one is gone. Search for search for them in familiar places. Experience intense longing, or even feel that life isn't worth living. If you're experiencing complicated grief and the pain from your loss remains unacknowledged, it is important to reach out for support and take steps that will that will and stable enable you to heal. Seeking support for grief. The pain of grief can often cause you to want to withdraw from others and retreat into yourself. But having the the having the face to face support of other people is vital for healing ling- um from loss. Even if you're not comfortable talking about your feelings under normal circumstances, it's important to express them when you're grieving. Um, while while sharing while sharing your loss can make the burden of grief easier to carry, carry, That doesn't mean that every time you interact with friends and family you need to talk about your loss. Comfort can also come from just being around others who care about you. The key is not to um, isolate yourself. turn to friends and family members. Now is the time to lean on the people who care about you, even if you take pride in being strong and self-sufficient. Rather than avoiding them, um, um, draw friends and loved ones close, spend time together face to face, and accept the assistance that's offered. Often people uh, want to help, but don't know how. So tell them what you need, whatever, whether it's a shoulder to cry on, a listening ear, or just someone to hang out with. If you don't feel you have anyone you can regularly connect with in person, it's never too late to build new friendships. Beware how you use social media. Social media can be useful in letting others know about your loss and reaching out for support. However, it can also attract internet trolls who post inappropriate, insensitive, or even abusive messages to spare yourself from additional pain and heartache at this time. You may want to limit your social media use to closed um, groups rather than public postings that can be um, commented on by anyone. Now I would like to say a prayer for Blue for Comet on Twitter. So um dear God, um please be there for Comet through this um hard time and help him through his grief. Um, be there for Blue as she makes her way to heaven, and help her rest in peace and find everlasting life. Help Blue's family and friends to be able to get through this grief with ease and to move on when they're ready. In your son's name, I pray. Amen. Well, that's it for SavoryFox Talks this time.